Well, as David just did a great talk about accessibility, there's a lot of crossover when it comes from websites to social media. So if I do hash over a few things again, it's because they're important and you should know about them. So put your hands up here if you actually have a social media account or work on a social media account at any time through your career. I think that's a full house. So when it comes to accessibility, we really need to look at this when you think about 1 in 5 Australians at the moment have a disability. And this has been going up as years go by. But not only think about the person who has a disability, but they have friends, family, people around them that also, if they struggle to get on your website, social media account, they're going to tell their family and friends. So it's really something important to think about. So today I'm going to talk about why for the ABC it's important. You may have seen with David, he said it's law for us to actually make all our content accessible. We're going to look at alternative text, like David mentioned. It's really important on social media because a lot of the time, especially Instagram, it's images and people want to know what is in those images, and if they can't, click on it with a screen reader and let you know exactly what that image is. It's pretty null and void for you as a business, as a company, as a media organisation. Colour contrast, captioning videos. Who here, put your hand up if you will watch a video with the sound on at all? How many people would watch with the sound on? How many people would watch with the sound off? Just think about that for later in the presentation. So captioning videos is important, and also hashtags. So, as you know, I work for the ABC, and it's by law we have to adhere to the Federal Disability Discrimination Act. So this means we actually, by law, have to make our content accessible. We did a 5-year plan in 2020, and social media and digital communication was one of the main pillars that we looked at in our strategy moving forward. So the ABC as a whole, as our point is they must provide equal access and its digital content services for all Australians, regardless of disability, culture or environment. So equal access is, for us, is a basic human right, and disability discrimination is unlawful. So in this 5-year plan, we have actually started implementing things like audio descriptions for ABC TV. You can now actually put that in and it will give you an audio description for every TV program, news, service at all. We also look at ABC iView, ABC Listen and ABC News for our digital landscape. So who here has heard of the Good Things Foundation? Has anyone heard of them before? I see few hands in the room. So the Good Things Foundation actually do a digital inclusion report every year across Australia. They work with government and they look at what's important when it comes to the digital landscape and what people have accessibility to. Last year the report was in the COVID pandemic, so this actually saw that it was actually pretty good in improving and reducing that kind of divide between the digital landscape and Australians, because we saw at the beginning of the year before the pandemic, 10% of people in Australia did not have internet access. Halfway through, they did the report in the pandemic, and that went down to 1%. So it meant people were working from home, studying from home, and also using internet to communicate with family and friends that maybe they were in lockdown with. So it's really important to think about when it comes to social media, how people were accessing it at that point in time during the pandemic to communicate with other people around the world, or even in their own hometown in lockdown. So, just a reminder from what David said. So one thing we can talk about is photo of a dog sitting in an inflatable pool. Is that right? Maybe not. Image of a baby seal in a wheat crop. No. So when we think about this, alternative text is really important. And one thing I really encourage all of you guys to do, if you have a social media page and you haven't done this already, the one key takeaway from my talk, go and download a screen reader. You can do it on your desktop. If you have an iPhone, a Samsung, you can actually do a voiceover control in your settings. You could also do a talkback control on Samsung. So this basically will allow you to go through Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Be Real, Snapchat, whatever social media platforms you are using, and just go through it with not looking at the screen and a screen reader reading it to you and see how accessible it is, and does it make sense to you at all? Because alternative text, if you don't put anything in as a description, it will come up with jargon, as David said. It will be long lines, or it might be maybe an image of this, and it could be something completely different to what you're actually seeing. So when it comes to Twitter and Facebook, the first thing you should think about when you're posting or scheduling is straight away, do I have an alternative text to put in there? So can you put in there, you go basically put it in, you'll have an edit option on Twitter and an edit option on Facebook, and you can put in there what it is. So in this case, it's a seal in the middle of a wheat crop in the Yorke Peninsula. When it comes to Instagram, it's a little bit different. You can use your own scheduling programs with Instagram, but you can also do it natively on your mobile phone. When you go to post, if you scroll right down when posting, you'll see a little option to have accessibility. Click on that, and that will allow you to write in your alt text. So straight away, before you even click next, put in your alt text, make sure it's accessible to everyone to see in that. So what you really want to think about is, every time you're posting, can I add an alt text to this photo? Can I put it in straight away? It doesn't matter if you are scheduled something, you can go back in, Creator Studio on Facebook, you can go back in on any of your scheduling software that you use, you can add it if you've forgotten. Same as on Instagram, you can just go to the 3 dots on the top, click that, edit, and you'll have the option edit alt text. You'll see it at the bottom of the image. So, just like David did, this is 7-year-old Ava. So 7-year-old Ava knew the Keith Hospital was struggling. They've struggled for a few years without a GP at their local GP clinic, and then they've struggled with the hospital and having staff. So she decided she wanted to sell flowers at her local newsagent and raise money for the hospital. So this is the description. It's a short bit of what her story is that was given with this. I just want anyone to put their hand up and say, what would you give this as an alternative text? Anyone want to put their hand up and say what they'd give for it? No one's going to say? All right, so we could say young girl holding money, because she's holding money there, with a fundraising can next to her and a bunch of flowers. So the one thing we actually got told by our accessibility lead, Jerry, he was telling us one day that when it comes to alternative text, you want to keep it as short as possible, but also remember that when they click on that photo and they're interested in it, they will also click on the text description of the actual post. So keep the image description really simple, but if they want more, they will actually go and click on the actual post to read the whole full description of what the story is behind it. So we don't need to give exactly the full story in the alternative text. You can just keep it simple, and if they do want more, they will click on and read the description of the post on Facebook or Instagram. Colour contrast, as David mentioned. One thing we have been told at the ABC that we have done badly in the past is the colour contrast on our graphics. So whenever you're putting like a question tile, a graphic up on your social media, can you read the text? So as David said, the Colour Contrast Analyzer website is amazing. I highly suggest you guys have written that one down and make sure that you go to it, because you can actually go through and just do a triple check of, is this text or is this logo or is this going to work for people who may have low vision and may not be able to see it on our social media. So always think about this. In this instance, Brisbane got into trouble. I'm not blaming our Adelaide team, but Brisbane got into trouble because can you read, hey Brisbane, how friendly is our city? So there was a few times where we were told, you know, to be creative as the ABC. When I first started, I was one of the first social media producers. I've come from radio and news, and we were experimenting until they actually got a full research team who said, do you know what, we need to look into accessibility in social media and how we can do it better. So one thing they did say was our graphics, and when we put anything up on social media, we need to make sure that people can actually read what the question is on there, and also make sure that it's got alternative text. So in this regard, you can probably evidently see the one down the bottom with the white text on the black background is obviously a lot easier to read. So maybe just think about that next time and you go, okay, I'm going to put up a nice image with some text. Can we see it over what the image is behind it? All right, as I said, put your hand up if you watch videos on social media with no sound on. So this is one thing that has been pretty evident to Meta when they did research 2 years ago, is that 85% of Facebook users actually confessed to not actually listening to any videos they watch on social media. So it makes you then kind of go, well, hang on a minute, if they're not turning on the sound and listening to it, how are they actually knowing what's going on? So they all came out with advice to all publishers and they said, design for sound off, but delight with sound on. So you often see people will go, turn your sound on to listen to this kookaburra or listen to this, powerful message from an actor. But ultimately, the majority of people would be watching it with no sound on. So what do we do to actually make sure that they can accessible it? So one thing we've really been focusing on, especially with TikTok, Instagram Reels, and Facebook videos, is making sure they're all captioned. So if you are doing a video for Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, any social media platform, you really should be thinking about captioning it. So each platform actually allows you to auto-generate captions, but I give you a warning in that because in Adelaide, for example, even yesterday we did a story on the Somerton Man. When we put it up on Instagram, straight away the closed captions on Instagram was giving us Summertown Man instead of Somerton Man. And you can't really have that on social media in that example. Another example is SA Premier Peter Malinauskas. Do you think closed captioning is going to get his name right every time? So what I say is if you are doing auto-generating captions, there's no problem with it, but make sure you actually go in, click on it, and review what they've actually deciphered it as. Because if you are just going, oh yeah, there's auto captions on it, it's going to go through, the next things you might be getting an inbox message saying, oh, you've kind of got the Premier's name wrong and it's a rude Greek word or something else there. So just, think about captioning, make sure everyone can see what's going on, but just don't rely on those auto-generated captions. They may get you in trouble. So anyone a Doctor Who fan here? Am I the only Doctor Who fan in the room? Anyway, if you didn't know, this is the next Doctor Who, very exciting next year. If you've watched Sex Education, you may know who he is. One thing we've got to really think about when it comes to accessibility is hashtags. So gone are the days with hashtags where you just used to be hashtag Adelaide, hashtag Hot Girl Summer, hashtag, everything's going on. One thing we found is that when it comes to accessibility, hashtags is one of the biggest concerns. Hashtags, every time a screen reader reads it out, it is hashtag Adelaide, hashtag this, hashtag this. If you have a long worded thing like hashtag Digital Adelaide is so cool, every time it reads, it's going to read through that as one whole long word. So what you really need to think about is camel case. So, and I know there's a lot of people in this room are looking at me going, what the? So we've found that you have to use capitals to decipher every single different word in a hashtag. Otherwise, a screen reader will read it out as one long-winded word. So gone are the days where you just hashtag everything in lowercase and not really, think about it. Now we're hearing from people who can't, access social media. They're saying they'll get to a hashtag and they'll stop. They'll actually be like, it's too much, the screen reader is having a meltdown. So when you do hashtags, please put capitals in it. Break up the words with capital letters and also make sure you don't use more than 5 hashtags. Because once they get to the 3rd hashtag, they're tuning out. I don't know about you guys, but hashtag this, hashtag that, hashtag this, hashtag that. Are you gonna sit there and actually listen to 20 different hashtags? Is it engaging? Is it interesting to you? Just one thing to think about. So, as I said before, I really think everyone here, if you could take, home a bit of a key takeaway. Get a screen reader, whether it's on your mobile app, whether it's on your desktop. So you can look at extensions for your desktop to make sure you can add it in. Just warning you, we did this for a day after our first disability and accessibility training, and it does do your head in a little bit, but it also makes you realise that this is how people live every day, and it makes you appreciate how lucky we are to not have to, go through this process every day in looking and consuming news online, social media, websites. As David said, your colour contrast analyzer, it's really important. Anytime you're putting in a graphic image, anything with text, think about what the colour is behind it, make sure that you can see it, everyone can see it, and just put it in that website. If you're unsure and you go, do you know what, this yellow and this orange looks a bit iffy, just go to this website. It's free, you can use it anytime and just check it over. So camel case hashtags is the big thing. I know a few years ago we probably wouldn't have even thought about capital letters and hashtags, but the research has shown they don't like it. So one of the things is always to think about it as one of those things of like every word is a different capital letter. So you don't want long-worded hashtags. Another thing that also came back in research that ABC did a few years ago was the idea of the reading flow on Instagram. So if a screen reader is reading through an Instagram description and it has @PeterMalinascus, @ABC Adelaide, in the middle of the text, it really throws it off and it throws off that reading flow. You want to make sure, as we do at the ABC, all the hashtags are left to the end, any mentions are left to the end of the text, and if they decide they want to go through all the hashtags that you have at the bottom of the text description, they do have that ability to go and do it. So it's one of those things just to think, putting it at the top or at every time it reads as a screen reader, it will be at this person, at that person, at this, and hashtag this and hashtag that. So it's one thing to think about. I know a few years ago that was one thing that wasn't top of mind for me at all in posting to Instagram and posting hashtags, but really it's one thing that's important to a lot of people, and it can make their life and their day a lot easier. Also, just remember with videos, make sure they're captioned. So last week we had a great video from Splendour in the Grass. Don't know if anyone went to Splendour in the Grass, but we had a reporter on the ground there, Tom, and he was doing videos as he went, and they were going up on ABC News and ABC Australia TikTok. And one thing with TikTok is we've done a lot of correspondence with TikTok and setting up our accounts over the last few years with them. And they always said, make sure there is some text description that is right at the beginning of your TikTok video so that if people don't turn the sound on, which might be likely, they know what's going on. So for all the Splendour in the Grass ones, it was pretty simple. It just had text saying, this is Splendour in the Grass at the moment, look at all this mud. And that's all it was. Pretty simple. It stayed up the whole time. Tom reported, obviously spoke with artists and stuff. If people then were engaged enough to then turn their sound on, they could. But ultimately, for me, I watched it with no sound on, and I knew what was going on. You got a pretty good visual picture of what was happening at Splendour in the Grass. So if you guys want to at all, we do have resources on the ABC website under accessibility. It has these tips, but it also has tips for other areas in business. If you guys are interested not just in social media, you can go to that website anytime, and you can even download a little PowerPoint documentation that can give you all the tips that you need. And one thing I just want you guys to know, Stevie Wonder, like, he's been a big campaigner for accessibility. He actually said this quote at the 58th Grammy Awards when he awarded Ed Sheeran with Song of the Year, Thinking Out Loud, and he had a round of soaring applause. It's the biggest applause they probably had at the Grammys for anything. So just think about this. We need to make everything accessible to every single person with a disability. So I always think about this every day. It's like, I might struggle because I have hearing loss, but I think a lot of other people have worse problems navigating day to day. So if we can make it as easy as possible as we can for them, think of Stevie Wonder, think of him and go, do you know what? We can make a change, we can make it accessible to everyone, and yeah, so good on Stevie, it's good. So if you guys want to contact me at any time, there's my details, but obviously we're going to have a Q&A next, so you can answer any questions, and I will be at the network drinks as well tonight if you do want to chat. I'm always up for a chat, so feel free to come and chat with me.